Imagine you're a fighter pilot. You've been scrambled to intercept a commercial airliner that isn't responding to radio. You pull up alongside the cockpit. You look in through the glass, and nobody is at the controls. The captain's seat empty, the CO pilot slumped over, and in the cabin behind them, row after row of unconscious passengers, some still buckled in, some already dead. The plane is flying itself on autopilot on a programmed loop over a country that has no idea what is happening above it. This isn't a movie. This is August 14th, 2005, and what you're watching is the last hours of Helios Airways Flight 522. The question isn't just what happened, the question is, how did everyone on that plane lose consciousness, and why did nobody on the ground catch it in time? Helios Airways was a Cypriot budget airline. Small operation, island routes. The kind of airline you've probably never heard of until now. Flight 522 departed Larnaca Airport in Cyprus at 9:07 a.m., bound for Athens. On board, 115 passengers and 6 crew. The aircraft, a Boeing 737-300. At the controls was Captain Hans J.R.G. Mertin, an experienced German pilot. Alongside him, First Officer Pampos Karalambos. Before the flight, a Helios engineer had performed a maintenance check. He set the cabin pressurization system to manual mode necessary for the check. Standard procedure. Here's what wasn't standard. He forgot to switch it back. That single, silent mistake, one switch left in the wrong position, would kill 121 people. Shortly after takeoff, as the aircraft climbed to cruising altitude, the cabin began to depressurize. Not explosively, not dramatically, slowly, invisibly, silently. At altitude, the air thins. Without pressurization, oxygen levels drop. The effects creep in: confusion, drowsiness, euphoria. You don't feel like you're dying. You feel strangely calm. That's what makes hypoxia oxygen deprivation so deadly. It removes your ability to recognize that something is wrong. In the cockpit, warning systems activated, lights flashed. An alarm sounded, but here's the tragic irony. The crew misidentified the warning. The alarm was the same tone as a take of configuration warning, a signal they were trained to associate with a different, less urgent problem. The captain radioed the airline's maintenance team on the ground. He reported the warning and described what he thought was an equipment fault. Ground control didn't understand the severity. Neither did the crew. Neither knew the plane was slowly stealing the oxygen from every person on board. Cause and effect. Pressurization left on manual cabin slowly loses pressure. Crew misreads the alarm, no corrective action taken. By 34,000 feet, cognitive function was deteriorating across the entire aircraft. At approximately 10:12 a.m., Athens Air Traffic Control tried to make contact. No response. They tried again and again. Silence. The aircraft continued flying, autopilot engaged, locked onto its programmed route to Athens. Athens approach control escalated the situation. Greek authorities scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets from the Hellenic Air Force. At 11:24 a.m., the jets intercepted the aircraft at cruising altitude. The pilots pulled alongside. They looked into the cockpit. The captain's seat was empty. The first officer was slumped unconscious or dead against the controls. The oxygen masks in the cabin had deployed, but most passengers had already lost consciousness before they could use them properly. The plane was flying on autopilot, a ghost at 34,000 feet. What the fighter pilots didn't yet know was that one person on that aircraft was still alive. Andreas Prodromou, a flight attendant, trained as a pilot. He had managed to access supplemental oxygen, and in the final minutes, he entered the cockpit. He took the controls, but it was too late. There was no fuel, no viable altitude to recover from. He sent a distress signal, the last human act aboard Flight 522. At 12:00 p.m., the aircraft crashed into hills near Grammatica, Greece. All 121 people on board were killed. Greek authorities launched one of the most thorough accident investigations in European aviation history. What they found was both precise and devastating. The pressurization selector switch still in manual. One engineer's oversight. One unchecked item on a PI flight checklist. One warning alarm misunderstood by 2 trained pilots. The chain didn't require extraordinary failure. It required ordinary human error, compounded by a system that didn't catch it. Investigations also revealed a deeper problem. The Helios maintenance crew had no standardized handoff protocol to ensure the switch was returned to the correct position. The pilots, meanwhile, had no clear training to distinguish between the pressurization alarm and the takeoff configuration warning because they sounded the same. A design flaw, a training gap, a checklist failure,
and 121 lives lost.
The airline was heavily fined. Helios Airways ceased operations in 2006, but the families of the victims spent years in Greek courts seeking accountability, battles that continued long after the wreckage was cleared. Following the Helios disaster, aviation regulators introduced stricter protocols for pressurization checks, including mandatory verbal confirmation between crew and ground engineers after maintenance. Boeing updated advisory materials for the 737 to better distinguish alarm sounds. Airlines were instructed to review checklist procedures. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Human error is not a problem you fix with a memo. Checklists get rushed, alarms get misread, fatigue, familiarity, and routine breed complacency.
That is not a condemnation of pilots, it is a description of how human cognition actually works under pressure and repetition.
Aviation's safety record is extraordinary,
but Helios reminds us that it is built on a foundation of near misses, disasters, and reforms written in laws. Every rule in the sky has a story behind it.
This is one of them. 1. Complacency is the invisible danger. The engineer didn't make a reckless decision.
He made a forgettable one.
In high-stakes environments, forgettable mistakes are often the most fatal.
2.
Alarm design is life or death communication.
When two different emergencies share the same warning sound, the system is broken before the emergency begins. Clarity in design saves lives. 3. Hypoxia is uniquely dangerous because it hides itself.
You cannot feel yourself losing the ability to think clearly.
That's why protocols, not instinct, are the final line of defense at altitude.
A ghost plane flew over Greece for nearly 3 hours. The world below had no idea. The passengers inside had no idea. The crew didn't know they were running out of time because hypoxia had already taken that awareness from them. One switch. In the wrong position, we build extraordinary machines and fill them with extraordinary people.
But we are still human.
And that means we are still vulnerable to the smallest, quietest kinds of failure. The Helios ghost flight isn't just an aviation story. It's a warning about what happens when we trust routine more than verification. So here's the question I'll leave you with. In your own life, what switch might be in the wrong position right now? And would you even know?
If this investigation made you think, subscribe and don't miss the next deep dive.
Because the most important lessons rarely come from what went right.